Hi, everyone. My name is Brenne Hali. I'm the founder and CEO of SelfSpoken, which is a communication coaching company. I work with individuals and teams on really finding that sweet spot between conveying their expertise and staying true to themselves in all of their interactions. So from high stakes presentations and public speaking engagements to one-on-ones or daily conversations, I really help people show up in the world and in their communications as the people they most want to be. So I'm so glad you're all here joining us today. I'm honored to be jumping onto Kit's platform today. And the topic we're really going to dive into is how to not just speak like a pro, right? Convey that expertise under pressure, but also how to stay true to yourself while you're doing it so that you don't have to fake or force your way through interactions. Let me just check in on Kit here. How does one speak like a pro? Where do they begin? Yeah, great question. So I think the first piece of really speaking like a pro is defining for you what that means, right? There are so many shoulds out there. You should come across this way. You should speak that way. You should try and replicate what that person's doing. And I think the biggest gift you can give yourself, and really the gateway to being as effective and successful as you possibly can be as a speaker, is getting clear on what that means for you and making sure that whatever that ideal that you're striving for is something that feels aligned with who you are and what your values are. So for me, what it means to speak like a pro is to make sure that I'm really clear, right? One of my favorite mantras in the world is clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So when I show up to communicate with someone, whether I'm speaking on a stage, training a team, teaching a session within my Presence Under Pressure group coaching program, I got to be really clear about what I want to say and how to say it so that it lands. Now, when I say so it lands, I mean, I really have to do that mental math about where is my audience contextually on this topic I'll be speaking about. Like, how much do they know about it? How much do I got to zoom out on the problem I'm addressing or the skill set that I'm teaching so that I can incrementally zoom in. So clarity is number one. I really strive to be a clear communicator and really help whoever I'm speaking to fully understand what I'm speaking to, what I'm speaking about. So that's one piece of defining what speaking like a pro means to me. It also means being intentional about how I want to make people feel when I'm speaking to them, right? I like to ask people that I'm working with for the first time if they've ever really thought about how Newton's third law of physics applies to their speaking skills. And here's what I mean by that. Newton's third law of physics is for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? For every cause, there's an effect. And the more specific you can be about the effect you want to have, the easier it is to bring that cause energy to that situation to have that desired effect. That cause energy, that's intention. So the clearer you are with yourself about what intention you want to bring to a situation, the more effective you'll be at making people feel the way you want them to feel. So that's also what makes a pro speaker, someone who's clear, someone who's intentional, and also someone who's really authentically empowered. Someone who's not apologizing or asking for permission in either verbal or nonverbal ways when they're speaking, but someone who really owns who they are, owns the gifts and the value that they have to bring to a situation, and someone who lets that really come through. So the first piece of speaking like a pro is really defining specifically what that means for you. Let's see what else. Can't hear you. We still can't hear you. Let's see what you said. Have you always felt like you could speak like yourself? Have you always felt like you could speak like yourself personally? How did you get better at it? Yeah, that's a great question. Oh, thanks for flashing that question on the screen for me. So I come from a performance background. So since the time I was a little kid, I had no problem jumping on a stage, being in the spotlight, performing for other people. But something happens, and I talk about this a lot with anyone I work with, something happens as we get older where the world really sort of strips that confidence away from us because we get all these messages about how we should come across, how we should perform on a stage, right? So we start second guessing ourselves over time. So I think while early on, I had some really bold, clear instincts about how to speak or perform effectively in front of other people. I think as I got older, I started to sense that I was getting underestimated. I look younger than I am. I always have. I'm a petite person, so that's a strike against me in some ways when it comes to credibility or projecting maturity. And I have it good compared to so many other people who have to deal with all sorts of biases, unfair biases out there in the world, whether it's racial or gender or age. And so I think there's something that comes with the power of being underestimated and feeling like there are skills that you need to build in order to not only address that, but to get more aware of your blind spots as early as you can, so that you can then take on the tactics or the communication rituals that will send the message you mean to send. So for example, just to demonstrate, before I started about a decade ago, really doing my research and my training in this field of what it means to communicate with confidence and project credibility under pressure, I would tape myself just giving speaking samples, right? And when you tape yourself, it's like reviewing the game tape on how you come across. You're able to see a lot of the blind spots. And even though it's uncomfortable, it's the number one tip I give anyone to really refine their skill set. So when I first reviewed the game tape on me, I noticed that I used to communicate something like this. Like my chin would dip a little bit, I'd twist a little bit, I'd use my head a lot, I'd speak a lot quicker. Maybe I'd use my hands, or maybe I'd trap them down. My eyes would kind of be going all over the place. And right now, I probably seem a lot younger, probably less mature, maybe even less intelligent than I did a second ago. And now I'm going to take up a little bit more space. I'm going to look directly at you. I'm going to use my hands. I'm going to take more. And suddenly you trust me a little bit more. You think of me as maybe a bit more intelligent, a bit more credible, a bit more mature, a bit more empowered, right? So I'm moving myself more toward the alignment with the speaking style I want coming across on the outside. So I wouldn't say I started, even though as a kid I started out super confident with communication. I think over time that got stripped away from me until I identified that I felt a little bit underestimated. So then I reviewed the game tape, got really clear on some of my blind spots, and then built some of the skills, which I teach, on how to make sure I'm sending the message on the outside that I mean to be sending on the inside. So I'm more in the driver's seat of how I come across when I speak. Yeah, I do have a masterclass coming up. So on February 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, I am teaching a Power Hour masterclass, the foundational skills that we dig into within my signature Presence Under Pressure group coaching program. And that's really what we'll be talking about, what it takes to have presence under pressure, and not just in a fluffy, vague, ambiguous way. I'm talking really practical, science-backed techniques for managing nerves, right? Centering yourself under pressure, exuding the qualities you want coming across, embodying that presence and that confident professional speaking style. We'll also dig into how to prepare your messaging more efficiently, so you don't have to rehearse it 7,000 times out loud to have it come out the way you intend it to. I'll give you a really specific framework for preparing what you want to say. And then how to say it in less time, but with more impact, right? Because it's one thing to know what you want to say, but then how do you say it in that neat, nutrient-rich way so you're not just rambling on? And we'll dig into some other really practical skills. So the web address to sign up for that, I'm hoping you can pop meet kit, but it's selfspoken.com/pup, that's PUP -masterclass. selfspoken.com/pup -masterclass. Hopefully we'll include it too in the link below, but you're all welcome to join us for that. It's absolutely free. It's webinar style. You don't even have to show up on camera to show up. Just come and join us live, because I only do this masterclass twice a year. And there's going to be a nice bonus in it for you at the end of the hour if you stay the entire time. So yes, that's it. The website Kit just put in the chat. Thanks so much. I'd love to see you there. It's called How to Articulate Yourself Clearly and Confidently When It Matters Most. 5 game-changing strategies for turning pressure into presence anytime, anywhere. So I hope to see you all there. What else can I dig into for you? What are typical questions you usually get from clients? Sure. Well, why don't we talk about some that I had just this morning? So the first biggest question I like to address is how to really manage nerves and second guessing so that you can get out of your head when you're speaking and really fully engage the people that you're talking to. So what I first want to hit with this is just to acknowledge that if you feel nervous or you start second guessing yourself as you anticipate being on the spot or as you begin speaking, there is nothing wrong with you. And you're not alone. We all experience this. In fact, it's how we're physiologically wired. So I want to talk a little bit more about what I mean by that's how we're physiologically wired. We as human beings, we are wired to perceive any situation where we're the center of attention, where there are other eyes on us, as inherently dangerous. It's reminiscent of being a little creature in the woods and noticing that there are pairs of eyes on us. It's a dangerous situation for your limbic brain, your fight or flight brain to be in. So when your limbic brain perceives that that's happening, that you're either singled out or you're about to be singled out, it's going to flood your body with all sorts of stress-related hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. And when that starts happening, the worst thing you could do for yourself, which I'm sure we've all done before, is to try to talk yourself out of it, right? To say to yourself, calm down, or you know what you're talking about. Even if you're sending yourself positive intellectual messages, your limbic brain, your fight or flight brain doesn't respond to intellectual conversation. It doesn't speak that language. The language that it does speak, though, is physical. You have to take on physical behaviors for your limbic brain to get the message that, oh, this isn't actually a dangerous situation. That adrenaline, that cortisol isn't actually helpful or productive here. So we're going to go much deeper into this in that masterclass that I'm teaching on February 16th. But the first thing to think about is to just do a body scan in your mind's eye from the inside. If you're carrying any tension. Big offenders of tension are in your neck, your shoulders, your chest, and your abdomen. The reason these areas get tense when you sense that you're the center of attention is so that if this really were a fight or flee situation, your body would have that tension in it to fight off the predators, or would have that tension in it to run out of that situation with a lot of speed. So when you can do a body scan and start to notice the tension and actively release it, you send a really important message to your limbic brain that you don't have to tense, that this isn't a dangerous situation. Once your limbic brain gets that message, it'll go, oh, okay, I can chill on the cortisol. I can chill on the adrenaline. There's not that fight or flee energy that I need to keep exacerbating. So that's one big thing that you can do. The other thing is to get really clear on what your personal blind spots are, not just behaviorally, like how you use your body language and how you use your voice, but also your blind spots in terms of your messaging. Do you use a lot of filler words? Do you do what I like to say is walk the point you're trying to make around the block until you arrive at your point? Do you repeat yourself a lot, right? Just little things that here and there you're probably doing from a very generous impulse. You want people to understand what you're saying. You want to emphasize your points, but those blind spots might actually be undercutting you. So those are other questions that I usually dig into with clients. Once they have that awareness, once they know that they're doing that, I'll usually give them some practical tools for being able to turn that habit around, to maybe ditch one instinct in favor of something that helps them come across the way they want to come across, right? So for example, with the habit of walking the point around the block until you get to the point is to start to ingrain a habit of not speaking until you're clear on what the bottom line is. So you have to identify for yourself, what's the bottom line? What's the main point, the central idea I want to get across? And let that be the first thing that comes out of my mouth. And let the rest of the context follow, as opposed to what a lot of people do is they'll give a bunch of context up front and then they'll eventually end at the bottom line. We as human beings like to be taken care of. We want to know where you're going with something. And if you hold out to give us that bottom line till many sentences later, we start to tune out and we don't trust you as much as a reliable communicator. So again, bottom line up front is a great skill for addressing some of those things. Other questions that come up are around and that I work on a lot with teams is facility with slides, right? So being able to engage a virtual audience and present with slides effectively. A couple pain points here, right? We can't always gauge our audiences. Often they're hidden behind screens without cameras turned on. So how do we really make sure that we have their attention and that we can hold it? And then also, how do we use slides, again, whether it's a virtual audience or back in-person audience situations, how do we make sure that we're really orienting them in what we're talking about, using our visual aids to our advantage? So I get into a lot of tactics and techniques with not only formatting your slides so they work for you instead of against you, but also how to engage with those slides so that you're really taking care of your audience. You're really taking care of your listeners' attention. So those are some major questions that I get. Let me think, what other things? Let me see another question coming up here. So how long does it take, in your opinion, to get over speaking anxiety? Ooh, it's a tough question, Kit. Well, a couple things on that. I hate to give the answer, it depends, because it feels like a cop-out answer, right? But it really depends on repetition and your willingness to practice, right? So I speak all the time, every day, for a living. So I still experience the butterflies or the anxiety or the little bit of adrenaline that I get every time I'm stepping into an anxiety-provoking situation, because thank goodness my limbic brain is still working. But at the same time, I have skills that I'm kicking into that will not only shorten my warm-up period so that I can get in flow a lot quicker, but the other piece of it is that even as I'm getting in that flow, hopefully the discomfort or the nerves or the anxiety that I'm feeling is at the very beginning. Hopefully it's pretty much invisible to you. So that would be my goal in answering that question, that rather than it being like, okay, 6 months, hardcore training, which yes, you can learn skills in less than 6 months. I teach people these foundational skills in 3 sessions, right? Or even in a 90-minute session. And then they can go on to practice and integrate these skills as habits. But I think more than it being a specific amount of time, it's really about going through a refining process of getting clear on what your blind spots are, understanding the technical skills and tools that you need to start practicing in order to overcome those blind spots, and then practicing those proactive tools and skills enough times to the point where it becomes your new instinct. You know how to take care of yourself in those situations in a way that really works for you. Again, not just something that people say that you should do, right? You have to ingrain that ritual for yourself. And that's a lot of what we do inside my Presence Under Pressure group coaching program too, is I give you a ton of foundational tools and skills to work on each week. Well, actually not a ton. We really make sure that it's not overwhelming, right? We're focusing on 1 or 2 foundational skills and tools each week, but we make sure that you know how to build it into your practice, into your routine, into your showing up and speaking up in the world every week. So that's my answer to that. Let's see. Are you all loving this value so far? Hopefully. It's so cool that some of you are joining us live. Thanks for being here, for taking this time out of your Friday. What else do we got? What else can I dig into with you? What are some common mistakes? Yeah, sure. So I think the first most common mistake, we'll call it, when it comes to communication is unintentional focus. What I mean by unintentional focus is that we all have inside our brains something that I like to think of as a spotlight, okay? So in any given moment when we're talking to someone, or maybe we're even talking to a group of people, that spotlight is on inside our brains, and it's either shining on the person or the people we're speaking to. We're completely focused on them, completely focused on providing them value, making clear points, helping them understand something more deeply. That's focus on them. That's spotlight on them. But I think our default a lot of the time is to let that spotlight turn around and shine inward, making almost blinding us with our own insecurities and internal monologue, so that we really become self-conscious, right? That word self-conscious. We're just completely conscious of everything going on with us instead of completely conscious of everything that's going on with them, with anyone that I work with, individual, team, student, inside presence under pressure. When you really sense, you can really tap into that feeling of fully focusing on someone outside of you. So much of the internal chatter just dissolves, if not all of it. Like right now, I can't see any of you, but my full focus is on making sure that I'm being clear, that you're understanding what I'm saying, that you're really receiving the message, that you're getting it in a way that you can process, not having a lot of other context about me or the work that I do, right? So my full focus is on you, and hopefully that's reading, right? That you feel like I'm fully with you, I'm fully engaged with you, as opposed to if I demonstrate the opposite behavior that I see a lot of the time, which I'm going to start to do behaviorally a little bit, which is to let my eyes start completely darting around the room, really thinking about what I'm trying to say and letting that spotlight go completely inward, right? So
Oh yeah, a lot of people do that.
I'm just trying to think about that next word or that next idea that I want to communicate. And now I'm back. And now I'm engaged with you. And just to sum up this point, a lot of people ask me, how do I become a more engaging speaker, a more engaging communicator? To which I'll usually say, if you want to be more engaging, you have to be engaging the people you're speaking to actively, behaviorally, with your body language, with your energy, with your message. It has to be all about them. So that's really the biggest mistake I see, unintentional focus.
Brenne, question for you. What's the difference between in-person versus virtual speaking?
What do you mean? What do you mean by difference? Do you mean like stylistically or in terms of focus?
Since COVID hit, a lot of people are trying to adapt virtually.
Yeah,
And so are there any big differences that they should know when we're doing everything virtually nowadays?
sure. So let me start with answering that question behaviorally first. So when it comes to virtual communication, the number one thing to be thinking about is really where your eyes are. I come from an acting background, and I can't tell you how many directors I've had or on-camera acting classes I've taken where they say something to the effect of the eyes are the window to the soul, right? And sometimes when we're just in a meeting or we're giving a webinar, it's not so much that we need to give them our eyes because them our whole soul. But I say this because your eyes, where your eyes are going to influence where your listener or your audience's focus is. So right now, my eyes are steady. I happen to be looking at myself right now because Kit's no longer with me, but I'm keeping my eyes steady with that window right in front of me, centered in my screen. In fact, I even pulled the window that the video screen is currently on, over to the center of my screen. Let me show you actually. When the screen first came on, technically the monitor is to the left. And notice now it looks like I'm kind of speaking off to the side. So all I did was drag the monitor right in front of me, so it's right under my camera. And now it feels like I'm talking directly to you. So the two takeaways here are, when you can, especially if you're just talking to one person or you're giving the kind of webinar where you can't really see anyone, make sure you're keeping your eyes centered and steady at one point. I personally don't coach my clients and students to look directly into the camera unless they're shooting a straight to camera video. I don't think it's necessary for me to look right into the camera, because when I look into the camera like this, often what I'll see is that people's expression will bleed out, right? So now it's like my eyes are just staring at a green dot. As opposed to when you're looking at a person, then your expression is much more likely to come online and you're keeping your eyes steady. So it's more, you get more bangs for your buck, if you know what I mean. So that's the first thing with virtual communication and speaking style. Get those eyes steady and centered. Now, if you're working with a team or several colleagues, which I'm often doing, I like to mimic what I teach in in-person settings, which is to make sure that you're really steering your focus in an intentional way. Two ways to do this. One way to think about it is, don't just move your eyes like I'm doing right now. Move your whole head. So it's clear that you're changing focus. Because when you just move your eyes, it can often look like you're just distracted, or you're questioning yourself, or you're unsure, right? As opposed to, now I'm looking at someone else, Now I'm looking at someone else. Now I'm looking at someone else. The way to think of this is instead of making eye contact, make nose contact. Really use your nose as a pointer and your eyes will automatically follow. The thing I usually tag on to that point when I work with teams is to use people's names, to let them know that even if it no longer looks like you're looking right at them, they know that you're calling on them to pay attention or that you're including them in the conversation, right? So just to demonstrate, it might sound something like this. So yeah, I'm going to throw over to Bob in a little bit to talk a little bit more about X, Y, and Z. I know that Sherry might be able to throw in a pointer or two there, right? So I'm referring to them and I'm moving my eyes around in a really direct and intentional way. Again, mimicking as if we were in a conference room together. And then beyond that, when it comes to in-person communication style, if you're speaking on a stage, I would give you that same note. Make sure that you're breaking up your audience into sections like I'm doing right now. So I'll be communicating with that section of the audience over there, giving them my full attention, eyes and nose, then communicating with another section out there, giving them my eyes and my nose, right? So much more intentional focus. I could go much deeper into that, the difference between virtual and in-person communication styles, but I hope that's helpful just to get you started. Yes, nose contact. Good one, right? That one comes from my mentor, Kara taught me that one. Oh, okay. He's still working out his technical stuff. Yeah, sure. So just to repeat, you're all invited to join us for a free masterclass on February 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. I'll be teaching a masterclass on how to articulate yourself clearly and confidently when it matters most. 5 game-changing strategies for turning pressure into presence anytime, anywhere. I'd love to see you all there. The URL, I think, is somewhere in the chat, but it's selfspoken.com/pup, PUP-masterclass. It's called My Presence Under Pressure Masterclass. And it's going to kick off the enrollment period, the just under 2-week enrollment period for my signature group coaching program, which I only run twice a year. It's for big-hearted go-getters from every industry who really want to find that sweet spot between communicating their expertise, conveying their expertise in all of their interactions while staying true to themselves. So no faking it, no forcing it, no trying to come across as some sort of polished robot, really honoring who you are and being able to show up in your communications from a more authentically empowered place with a clear head and clear tools for being able to communicate effectively. I noticed your programs have alliterations. Do you intentionally think of them? I've always loved alliteration since I was a little kid. I think also because I, as a kid, had a receptive language disorder. So sometimes really synthesizing information and remembering information was tough for me. And so whenever I could come up with an alliteration mnemonic device, that always helped me remember things more easily. So I've always taken that into my adulthood. It's also why I'm so passionate about empowering people with strong communication skills. I believe that this stuff is not a talent that only some people are born with and some people aren't. Everything I've mentioned today is absolutely part of a skill set that anybody can learn. Anybody can learn. What do you say? Wait, what are alliterations for those who don't understand it? Yeah, sure. So alliteration is just when you use more than one word in a row that has the same starting consonant, right? So presence under pressure, PP, right? It just has that sound, that memorable sound. Or what's another good example? Back to basics, right? That's alliteration, when the sound feels repetitive and memorable. Your mess is your message. Yes, exactly. Another great example of alliteration. Yeah, so people can follow me on Instagram at Brenne_SelfSpoken. That's where we have the most fun on social media. You can also find us on LinkedIn on our SelfSpoken page. And I actually just joined Clubhouse this week. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the new social platform Clubhouse. It's like a mixture of live podcasting and a big conference call. So you can look for me on there as well. But most importantly, make sure that you head over to my website, selfspoken.com, and grab a free copy of my Presence Playbook. Not only will I send that directly to you, but then you'll be joining our free e-tribe where I'll send you just weekly tips, practical insights to help you elevate your communication game, overcome some pain points. And we'll also keep you in the loop about other free community events like workshops and masterclasses and other offerings we have going on. So definitely come and sign up for our e-tribe there. Thank you so much. If you all found value, let Brenne know in the comments. Yeah, sure. Kid, I'm sorry about your technical difficulties. Thanks for letting me take over your channel here today. It's been so fun. It's always just so fun talking about these skills. So I guess if I want to leave you with anything, it's that we have a lot of work to do as a world and as individuals to not only show up in the world the way that we intend to, right? By building practical skills, becoming aware of our blind spots, being more intentional with our focus. But we also have a lot of work to do as a world in reimagining what professionalism looks and sounds like, what leadership expertise looks and sounds like, how we perceive communication confidence and leadership presence. So my why, the why behind everything I do, is to empower people to show up and speak up in the world they intend to, and to also help the world redefine its perception of confidence and leadership presence. So if you want to keep having conversations like this, definitely come on down, join our e-tribe. Make sure you sign up for that masterclass on February 16th. We're closing registration on February 12th, and we got limited seats, so make sure to join us. And otherwise, I just thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being interested in this subject. It says so much about who you are as a human being, and I look forward to seeing you and getting to know you on all our channels, as well as Kit's channel here. Bye, everyone. Take good care. Take good care of yourselves and all the people you love.